Group, we have a long-standing partnership with Kazakhstan. What is key for an investor is clarity and predictability. Right. Public-private partnerships play such a vital role. Almati Airport financing, it's really the largest private sector infrastructure financing outside the natural resources. Ultimately, economic growth is meant for providing welfare.
Hello and welcome back to the Astana Times YouTube channel. I'm your host Asel Satubaldina, and I'm very much delighted to be joined tonight by Ms. Wiebke Schlomer. She is the Director for Turkiye and Central Asia at the International Financial Corporation. Ms. Schlomer, thank you very much for making your time and your packed schedule for us to come to the studio and talk to us.
Thank you, and I'm really delighted to be back in Astana. And really delighted to be here and meet you and have a conversation with you.
Me too. You are quite a frequent visitor to Kazakhstan. If you could share with us what was one of the most memorable visits to the country so far.
Thank you, with pleasure. Of course, I often visit Astana and Almaty. But I will say last year I did a trip that was very special for me, and we went to Aktau. So to the very west of the country, because I was curious to see the port of Aktau and understand better the trade routes. And I will say why it was special and memorable. It gave me, among others, an idea of how big this country is. I think the flight, I was telling you, the flight from Astana to Aktau is probably 3 hours. And I kept looking out of the window and all I saw was the steppe, which is very fascinating for me. I come from Europe where everything is smaller. So very, very impressive. And it gives us an idea, I think, of the huge potential that the country has.
Right. So I want to start our conversation, the actual conversation, from a broader perspective on the growing engagement between Kazakhstan and IFC. And as I know, IFC and Kazakhstan have been working together for many, many years, with IFC supporting the country in many areas, be it green transition, climate, private sector development. Looking at that long partnership, what do you think, for you personally, are some of the biggest moments so far?
Thank you. So I will say, first of all, IFC and the whole World Bank Group, we have a long-standing partnership with Kazakhstan. And perhaps to put some numbers to it, since we are a financial institution, we have, over the more than 2 decades of working together, invested over $2.6 billion in the country, so a sizable amount, in over 60 projects, both financing and advisory projects. So this is across industries. If you ask me of particular projects, 2 come to mind. One is, they're both in the broader infrastructure. One is the Almati Airport financing, where we, a couple of years ago, financed with over $200 million the modernization and rehabilitation and expansion of the Almati Airport. And it's important for me because it's really the largest private sector infrastructure financing outside the natural resources. Of course, natural resources attract a lot of capital in the country, but as we look into diversifying, an airport, and the Almaty Airport is so critical, and we're seeing how the expansion, the modernization is leading to increased traffic, better services. So that's one that's very memorable. And something I would say I'm very proud of. I was quite involved. The other one, somewhat related, is the Bakad ring road. And that is still, even though it's been around now for a few years, it is still the largest and most complex PPP, so public-private partnership project in the country. And it was actually one that's been paving the way for more PPPs in the country. And I think it shows how a well-structured and a a project with an international competitive tender process, a very transparent process, can attract a lot of interest from companies all over the world. So that's something where IFC was the lead advisor. And we're very proud with the consortium that was actually winning. They completed the project ahead of schedule, which is not always
in the news.
exactly, which is not always happening. Usually, there are delays because these are complex projects. And I think we're seeing, if memory serves me well, that the traffic is already more than doubling now. So it really shows how good this type of good infrastructure can have a big impact. And these are complex projects, so that's why I'm very proud of. Of course, we've done a lot of other things that I can also touch upon, but these were two that come to my mind.
So, Ms. Schlomer, as I know, your work focuses, as you mentioned right now, on bringing private sector into many development areas. If we focus on Kazakhstan, what do you think are some of the biggest opportunities ahead for the country in this area?
Thank you, and it's a very good time that actually to talk about this, as we're just discussing together with the government our strategy looking ahead for the next few years. And perhaps as a basis, the country's national development plan and the diversification strategy really offer a very good basis for a variety of investment opportunities. And perhaps I'll name a few. One, I see, if you think again of the location of Kazakhstan, between China and ultimately to the west to Europe. And you know, that's why also my trip to Aktau really gave me a very good sense. The transport potential that Kazakhstan has is very critical. So really it's important for infrastructure, transportation, logistics, bringing goods ultimately from China to Europe and anywhere in between. So that's a huge potential that we see. Another area, of course, is agriculture.
Right.
I think agriculture is always a vital sector in Kazakhstan because it really provides livelihoods for the population, for rural areas. It creates jobs for rural areas. And I believe that Kazakhstan is still by far the largest grain producer in the region. So that's very significant. If you allow me to bring up one thing, and I just mentioned the importance of agriculture for rural areas and ultimately for jobs. And as the World Bank Group, we have a very big focus on employment opportunities, creating jobs in Kazakhstan and actually globally. And because what we see is over the next years, there'll be hundreds of millions of young people coming to the job market.
Right.
And it's so important that they find good jobs. And it helps for economic welfare, and it's key for stability. So that's where we have a very big focus. And there are actually 5 areas, and those apply also to Kazakhstan, 5 broad areas where we see they are big contributors to employment creation. And that's infrastructure and energy, it's agriculture, it's health, manufacturing, and also tourism. So, and I think, you know, if you think of these 5, you see that also for Kazakhstan, these are all very important sectors.
Yeah, those all the sectors that government always mentions.
Exactly.
And the president does the same, those strategic areas for the country's development, I think.
And like, if I can say, because I think all of these are important for economic diversification, for economic growth, but ultimately economic growth is meant for providing welfare, better livelihood for the people of the country, for the people of Kazakhstan.
If we now turn to the public-private partnership that you mentioned just earlier, and you know this is the area which Kazakhstan wants to grow, including in its partnerships with international financial institutions like IFC. In your opinion, what role does public-private partnership play in economic growth and diversification, and what needs to happen in a country to make them work better?
Yeah, thank you. And I will say you're speaking with someone who has spent sort of more than 20 years of my professional career focusing on public-private partnerships and infrastructure. So it's an area I'm very passionate about. And really, we see that public-private partnerships play such a vital role, and they can really help tackle key challenges and unlock opportunities across sectors. And let me say a few that I see in Kazakhstan. So people need energy. It's because it actually often goes back to fairly basic services that people need. People need energy, access ideally to clean energy, and access to water.
Right.
And this is where we see that well-designed PPP. We always say well-designed because they need to be thought through very much. The structures, what does the public and what does the private party or partner in a PPP project, who has what responsibilities, who has what obligations, who carries the risks, that's often what it's about. But that's where we see that they can really help deliver services in an efficient way, bring knowledge, because often it is international companies that are being brought in to operate some of the, or to provide some of the services. It's state-of-the-art knowledge, it's international best practice. And the private companies, the private operators, they also bring financing. So it actually has a positive impact on the government's budget. So from a fiscal perspective, there is a big positive impact.
If we speak about some concrete projects, and you've just mentioned earlier some of the biggest projects that IFC was involved in, like Bakad we mentioned, and the Almati Airport. Could you share with us maybe some of the ongoing projects that were not mentioned in this conversation yet?
And if I say, we work as IFC, we work with PPPs all around the world. And when we engage here in Kazakhstan, we really want to bring also the expertise and experience we've gained in other countries. To say, for example, countries that are partners to Kazakhstan, where, let's say, in Saudi Arabia, we've been working with the government, advising on an airport. Something, for example, from Latin America, where we've been working very extensively for toll roads. Then also here in the region with renewable energy projects. So these are, I would say, these are two concrete examples we see. One is around water and sanitation. And we have been, as the World Bank Group, together been developing a roadmap on how to expand, rehabilitate, modernize water and sanitation in the country.
That's very important.
Yes, exactly, because it's really, these are really basic services. And we've also seen, and by the way, I've seen, for example, when I visited Aktau, I know that water scarcity, water supply is actually a big problem. And so that's where it's one of projects where we're thinking about how can public-private partnership project help. That capital is there, I mean, and funding, expertise is there, best practice that can help with, for example, water provision. So that's one example. And then, of course, Kazakhstan, from an energy generation perspective, of course, the country is rich in natural resources and has been relying on fossil fuels. But it has a lot of sun, wind. So there are also these type of domestic resources that can be used for renewable energy, and also hydro in some parts of the country. So there are huge opportunities, and we would really, and we know the government is already engaged, and with our, I want to say, there are really vast experience across all countries, help the government, support the government with a broad renewable energy PPP program.
Can I just clarify one moment? It's for, I would say, for my understanding, for my personal understanding of this issue about PPP. What do you think makes private players incentivize them? What can incentivize them to get involved in PPP? Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a very good question, because they're well-defined projects, so that, you know, I always say, for private companies, especially, actually both foreign and local, what is key for an investor is clarity and predictability. Right. That's what they need to, you know, run their numbers, build their business case. And a PPP project, and that's when I say it's well-structured or well-defined, that exactly provides that clarity, it provides that predictability about the contractual framework, about funding flows, about who has what risk, because that's really, especially a private investor is interested in, so that they can then bring in their expertise, mobilize the funding to sort of do what they do best.
Yeah, it makes sense from your response. Since we mentioned the investment issue, and one of my next question is actually focuses on investment side. What do you think makes Kazakhstan an attractive investment destination?
Yeah. I think, again, there are a few that come to my mind. Let me perhaps briefly pick up again what I said earlier about the transit potential, right, and something that we are quite engaged in, and I see a huge role for Kazakhstan, and I see a lot of interest actually in Kazakhstan, is this transport corridor, I think often referred to as the Trans-Caspian corridor or Middle Corridor. There are different names for it. So that's, I think, one that's a huge initiative that attracts a lot of attention and makes Kazakhstan, given its central role, very attractive. So I think that's one. And there's, for example, again, one concrete project. It's the Almaty bypass railroad, something we're engaged on right now, which I think is something that's very attractive. But then there are also other areas, something I haven't talked much yet about, for example, in the financial sector. We're also working with some of the financial institutions here. So it gives you an idea how broad the continuum is, from big infrastructure projects to also working with local financial institutions to reach even small and micro enterprises, because that's also key, so that there is access to finance for smaller companies. So it's really the broad continuum that's available.
Right. If we speak about broader themes of sustainable development and also including renewable energy, what is your opinion on how can the country accelerate this transition, and how can IFC support Kazakhstan in this journey?
Yeah, thank you. And I think, and I have a lot of respect for that the country already started the transition to sort of a cleaner or greener, the green transition as we name it. So what we would like to see, and we really stand ready to support, and I imagine around the Astana International Forum this week, this will also be a big topic. It's around accelerating renewable energy. It's around accelerating work on water. I'll be actually speaking tomorrow on a panel around the water scarcity in Central Asia. And like you had said right away, that's a very important topic. So these, I think, are two things. Energy efficiency is another area where there's a lot of potential, be it energy efficiency for buildings, for public buildings, for processes, manufacturing processes. Then again, that's how wide it spans. We have a very strong partnership with the Agency for Regulation and Financial Markets. And we have supported them in developing the first ESG, so environmental, social, and governance guidelines for the financial sector. So that's how far reaching, I think, green transition is, that it goes all the way, or it's important the financial sector picks it up. So that's something, it just gives you an idea how many activities there are.
Yeah.
And again, we stand ready. It's a big part of our priorities, and because they ultimately lead to, probably a more prosperous future, a stronger economy, and ultimately livelihood for the people.
And I think that also tells, right, about the realization that companies and private players across the world are now having, that transitioning isn't a desire or a wish, it is a necessity, because without including in the context of Kazakh companies, quasi-state companies, without transitioning to ESG and all these sustainable benchmarks, your company would not prosper in this world, right?
Yeah, and we see always that the business case is strong for this. That's where I very much believe, because I come from the private sector, that ultimately it's not just about an aspiration or that it feels good to do. No, it's a necessity, like you say, and the business case for sustainability is very strong.
So our conversation is happening just one day ahead of the Astana International Forum, and you mentioned that you will be speaking at the event tomorrow. Could you share with us what are your expectations from the forum, and what does it tell about broader, I would say, effort of Kazakhstan and the region to be part of a global dialogue?
It's an excellent event, I want to say. I have joined or attended since it started, and it really it's a very senior level event. It brings together key people and it's called the International Forum. Right. It's beyond just economic issues. It's really international issues. It has a huge attendance. So it's excellent as a meeting point, from really high-level discussions, from a networking perspective. And it's the reach in terms of attendance is far beyond not only Kazakhstan, not only Central Asia. It has a very, very broad reach. So that really, I know of participants that come from pretty much most continents. And I look forward to attending, to seeing key partners for us, at some point, business partners, friends, and it's both the combination of formal events and a lot of informal networking space that makes it very productive.
I want to thank you, Ms. Schlomer, for making your time to talk to us in the studio tonight, despite the packed schedule that you might be having. So that's all my questions, and thank you very much for sharing your insights tonight with us.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.